5. We are so glad that you're choosing to join us this morning, spend a little time in God's Word, getting to know Him better, and that will serve you well throughout the rest of your day, I can assure you. We're beginning in Matthew chapter 4 this morning, picking up where we left off yesterday. Mark, take it away.
Matthew chapter 4, beginning in verse 1. Then Jesus was led up by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. After he had fasted 40 days and 40 nights, he was hungry. Then the tempter approached him and said, "If you are the Son of God, tell these stones to become bread." He answered, "It is written, man must not live by bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of God." Then the devil took him up to the holy city, had him stand on the pinnacle of the temple, and said to him, "If you are the Son of God, throw yourself down, for it is written, He will give His angels orders concerning you, and they will support you with their hands, so that you will not strike your foot against a stone." Jesus told him, "It is also written, do not test the Lord your God." Again, the devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their splendor. And he said to him, "I will give you all these things if you will fall down and worship me." Then Jesus told him, "Go away, Satan, for it is written, worship the Lord your God and serve Him only." Then the devil left him, and the angels came and began to serve him.
So I see a couple things that really jump out to me in this text. Number one, verse 3 and verse 6, the way that the devil introduces these temptations, right? If you are the Son of God. I think it's interesting about that is that later on, I think it's in Matthew 27, verse 40, this same phrase will come up. And it's when Jesus is on the cross. And people are shouting out, "If you are the Son of God, come down off the cross." And what I think is cool, actually, in Luke's account, in Luke chapter 4, that it ends that the devil will return at an opportune time to tempt Jesus. I think we kind of see that opportune time, at least an opportune time, right around his death. We see Jesus really struggling with the idea of having to go to the cross, having to go through crucifixion, how terrible that was. Let this cup pass from me. I mean, he's torn. It's a challenging thing. And again, the devil's going to try to use that. And again, it doesn't work. We also have the idea of him being able to call angels in both texts, right? Call angels to pick him up here. Call it 12 legions of angels to protect him at the cross. Again, doesn't do it. I think that's so cool. And just another thing that I think is neat is the connection between this passage and 1 Corinthians chapter 10, which talks about the people who were wandering in the wilderness and how they are an example for us, for the Corinthians, and I think for us today. A lot of similarities in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 2. It talks about their baptism through the water, through the Red Sea, and the pillar of cloud. In verse 4, it talks about them being nourished by the Spirit and being given food and water by Him. In verse 5, it talks about them being in the wilderness. It talks about how God was not well pleased in them, whereas we saw at the end of chapter 3 in verse 17, God is pleased, well pleased with Jesus. Putting God to the test, worshiping idols, all these connections. And what strikes me there is, how does 1 Corinthians 10 wrap up that comment? He says, no temptation has overtaken you, but what is common to man. We see in the book of Hebrews, right, that Jesus was tempted like we are and went through things like we do. We can have an assurance and put our faith in God to bring us through temptation or to give us a way of escape, because He did the same thing for Jesus. And we haven't been tempted with full confidence. I can say we have not been tempted with anything that Jesus hasn't. The devil has always used the same temptations. God has always used the same trials and tests. And both times God has always helped His people get through it and offer them a way out.
No, I think you're exactly right when you look at the parallel there. We are the sons of God too, not the way Christ is, obviously. But the devil will come and he will tempt us, and this is helpful. We always have to go back to the Word. The last thing I'll throw in is sometimes we think of it was on the cross when Christ finally dealt with what Adam started in Genesis chapter 3. But this is really in many ways the beginning. This is where Christ begins to undo everything Adam and Eve did. In the previous chapter, Jesus is baptized. He starts his mission. He is, in a sense, created now for his mission and ready for this mission. And what's the first thing that happens to him after his creation? Same thing that happened to Adam and Eve. They were tempted. Adam and Eve failed. Christ goes through the same temptations, lust of the eyes, lust of the flesh, pride of life, and Christ knocks it out of the park. So this is showing us that what Adam did is going to start slowly through the Gospels, going to be peeled back and rolled away, and it's going to culminate in the cross.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Answer. Be ready to answer with "It is written."
Yeah.
Immerse yourself in God's word. That's how Satan conquers, and by not being familiar with God's word is what results in Adam and Eve's downfall. We have to be committed to listening to what God says and doing that.
Yeah. All right, I hope that was helpful to you as you read through or listened to the text this morning and as you just grow in the Lord this week. God bless you. Take care.